Welcome to Bookswell Intersections. I'm your host, Cody Sisco, and today my guest is Joe McClean. Welcome, Joe.
Thanks for having me.
Sure. For a brief introduction for folks, Joe McClean is a screenwriter and director whose 2013 breakout indie feature Life Tracker screened at dozens of film festivals and sci-fi conventions before streaming on demand in 100 million homes through cable providers. His follow-up, the indie darling The Drama Club, premiered at Grauman's Chinese Theater in 2017 before finding a home on Tubi. His most recent endeavor, Viral, written and produced by McLean, was directed by and stars Blair Underwood. So, Joe, it's fantastic to have you on. We're here to talk today about Sins of Survivors.
All
Uh,
right.
so, I want to start with maybe like your inspiration and how did this project come together? It's unusual for a novel to feel like it came from crossed over from Hollywood, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's a lot of crossover in all sort of forms of storytelling, but this one, I just feel lucky. To be perfectly honest with you, I feel lucky because I was hired many years ago to write this story as a TV pilot by some producers in Detroit. And I fell in love with it. They had some ways that they were trying to get the thing made, and nothing really came to fruition. Years went by, but I had fallen in love with it, and I started using that script as a sample in Hollywood to get other work. And then one of those jobs was a project that I was sort of loosely associated with that had Blair Underwood attached to it. But his team wanted to read something of mine to know sort of like, why is this guy even in the room, right? So they read my sample, and it was about this now torn down, mostly forgotten black neighborhood in Detroit. And Blair had done a play about that neighborhood. So he knew about it from doing the play. And he pulled me aside and he just said, listen, I don't know a lot of black people that know about Black Bottom, so what does some white boy in Hollywood know anything about it? And the truth was that I had been hired, right? Like I dove in just through research, and because it's a period piece makes it a little bit easier. I was able to dive into like newspapers.com or the libraries, go to Detroit and study. So we sort of brought it back to life and we tried to pitch it around Hollywood ourselves. It's a period piece, super expensive. We couldn't get anybody to bite until just prior to the pandemic. Blair was on Broadway in a show called A Soldier's Play. And a friend of his, who's a publisher, who he's worked with in the past in publishing, came to see his show and said, hey, listen, if you've got any stories that would make good books, let us know. We're ready. And so Blair called me up and said, get out to New York as fast as you can. We got to pitch this Black Bottom story to HarperCollins. And fast forward again, even a little bit more than that, the contract took some time. The pandemic hit within a month of that. His show was actually closed down. So it took quite some time. And then, I had to jump through some hoops. I hadn't written prose professionally before. So they wanted me to write some chapters to just prove that I had that muscle or could exercise that muscle. I did so. And then in the end, they asked us for two books instead of one. So this became the first book, which was released in May, and second book comes out next summer. About the
That's
same family.
awesome. That's awesome. I want to come back to the prose muscle a little bit later and what that
Yeah.
was like, kind of coming from more of a screenwriting background and moving into that. But let's focus now on Black Bottom and the Carter family. So the Carter family starts at the beginning of the novel. Remind me where? I think it's somewhere in the South.
Yeah, it's outside of Birmingham, Alabama. It's in 1908. The novel is set up in a way that it's in three parts, but the first chapter in each part tells the years long story of how these brothers, the Carter brothers and their family, got from Birmingham, Alabama to Detroit.
Hmm.
And so that first scene is sort of the inciting incident of what is the thing that really pushed them to get out of the South. And it's when one of the brothers, the younger brother, um, can't resist himself when he sees a white drinking fountain.
Mm.
And as a young child, he's 12 at the time, just can't get his head around why we would have to drink out of separate drinking fountains. He assumes it must be because the water tastes better. And he's determined to get himself a belly full of that water and to find out what the reason is. That, of course, gets his family in a lot of trouble. His dad tries to step in, tries to make things right, but just makes it worse. And ultimately, his dad is lynched because of it. And his brother, the older brother of the two, they're Ben and Jasper. Ben is the younger brother. Jasper is the older brother. Jasper is able to rescue his brother from the terrible, gory sight of his father's lynching, and rescue him and their other siblings and get them out of Alabama. And then slowly but surely, they work their way through Kentucky and Ohio, and then ultimately to Detroit, where the brothers build an empire of sorts in this black neighborhood where they own their own businesses, and it's sort of coming out of Prohibition. The book, main body of the book takes place in 1937, and so after Prohibition, these brothers have made a killing for themselves during Prohibition, but now that booze is legal again, their main way of earning cash is sort of taken away from them, so they decide they have to go straight. And that's what the story's about, how these brothers go straight and how they drive into the future.
Yeah, one thing I appreciated was sort of the context of their migration, and their work. So they're working as coal miners for a while, and then eventually get to Detroit. You do show how sort of black workers and white workers like are treated differently, even like at job sites, in the coal mines, and then in Detroit, around the auto industry. And it seems that Black Bottom is where they can have more control and freedom over their own sort of enterprises, um, while still trying to maybe have an influence on trade unions and politicians who are still at that point very discriminatory towards the African American community.
Correct, yeah. Yeah, something that was really striking for me, and it's one of those things like we learn in elementary school or maybe high school, we learn one history, right? And then when we get to college and become adults and really get thrown into the world, baptized by humanity, we realize that the history we were taught was maybe a little sterilized and very
Skewed, yeah.
whitewashed.
Yeah.
So one of the things I think that we all learn is that, Henry Ford was this genius who changed the world with his conveyor belts and factories, and then we learn this one fact about him, which is that he paid all workers, no matter the color of their skin, $5 a day to come and work at Ford, which is true. It's true on the surface, but what's left out of that is that the really dangerous jobs, the melting and smelting of the metals and the irons that went into the more demeaning jobs, the ones that gave them black lung because of the way they were, all of the really awful jobs were given to black people.
Hmm.
And that lowered their life expectancy. It made turnover harder and faster. Where white people got, yes, they're making $5 a day, but their jobs are easy, right? They're working in the offices, or they're being the bosses on the shop floor. Yeah, so the racism is there, but we sort of glance over it in our history books.
Right, right. And tell me a little more about the Carter family empire, because it's not just that they have like a nightclub. It's like they've got like a whole set of businesses. They're kind of like intricately woven into the fabric of the Black Bottom community.
Yeah, as a whole, the real life Black Bottom. Listen, my story is definitely historical fiction, but every detail about the place and about the time period, and even some of the factual things, like a Shriners Day parade that happens in the book, like all of that is factual. The only thing that's not is the actual family that lives there. So the town of Black Bottom it's this incredible thing that is created out of tragedy. It's redlining, right? You can't buy a house in black people can't buy houses in any place that a white person might live. And that's because the insurance companies that are going to give you your homeowner's insurance are not giving you a mortgage based on the color of your skin. They won't give you, they're using your credit, right? Credit was sort of invented at this time to keep the people down that we wanted to keep down. Well, I don't have to say it's because I'm racist, or I don't have to say it's because I don't like black people or Chinese people or Irish people. I can just say it's because your credit score is low. And that makes me just a normal person, right? But what it does is it stopped people from living in certain areas. It automatically creates a bubble of where they can live, and now all the people of that type are forced into a specific spot. And that's what happened with black people all over our country. And Black Bottom was one of those neighborhoods in Detroit. So, terrible, terrible thing. But the city's also not offering like normal trash pickup, or not giving the mortgages or the loans needed to open businesses or stores. So black people go, okay, well, if someone's not picking up my trash, I guess we gotta pick up our own trash. Who's the trash man now, right? If there's nobody to take care of grandma's body when she passes, I guess we have to find our own undertaker. Who wants to be the undertaker, right? They built their own society and realized after hundreds of years of being told that they weren't able to, or not smart enough, or couldn't do it, they realized they could. And all of a sudden, these black people had autonomy that said, wow, like it felt like freedom, right? It also had the opposite effect on white people, which was, oh shit, we didn't think they could do it, and they could, and that made them want to push down even harder. So now here we are in Black Bottom in the book. The Carter brothers come up, they make a ton of money in Prohibition illegally, as sort of like adjacent to the crime world, the mob world in Detroit, which was like a Jewish mafia called the Purple Gang. Prohibition comes along, they decide they've got to go straight. What are we going to do with our money? All right, we're going to open a grocery store, and we're going to open a print shop, and we're going to open a nightclub. And that is the way that they were able to sort of invest their money and go straight, right? And now all of a sudden they're the upper echelon of their black community.
Yeah, let's talk about these brothers, the Carter brothers, Jasper and Ben, who are literal partners in crime, but also they're the heads of the family. And one of the things I really appreciated was how they're doing their best, right? They're trying to like raise their children and like take care of their families, and the children really have different ideas about what it means to like be successful. One kind of is sort of opting out and chooses to go explore the Brotherhood of Islam. Is that right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And another one really wants to make his name in the newspapers, and that gets him into trouble too. I was wondering about like how you shaped that family story.
Well, I have a son and I have a brother, right? So those are things that I'm certainly able to pull from, but you can never really learn a lesson until you've lived through it, right? You can try to teach someone all you want, but if they haven't experienced it themselves, there's no way for them to fully understand. And so one of the things that I struggle with now, I still struggle with it right now. My son's only 13 years old. I would do anything for this child. I would jump in front of a car, I would jump in front of a bullet, I would do anything for him and give him everything. But I also don't want the world to just be done with me. I still have so much I want to give. I'm not ready for him to be in control of the world because I still have more I want to do and more I want to say. And so these brothers who have been at the top of their game, right? They have been no holds bar, the world belongs to them. And now all of a sudden, two things happen. You see your kids come up, and the first thing is you see them making the mistakes, lessons that you've already learned, and you wish desperately you could teach them and tell them not to do those things, but you can't. And two, you see them taking over the world that you created, but you're not done with it yet. So it's this really hard push and pull. My favorite kinds of drama are the kinds when for lack of better terms, good guys and bad guys, right? When the good guy says his argument, you go, oh yeah, that's right, I totally understand that guy, I get exactly where he's coming from. And then the bad guy says his argument, and you go, oh yeah, that's right too, actually, I totally see that point. Ben and Jasper, they both want the same thing. They both want the success of their family. They both want to see their community rise up and be strong. But they have two very differing ways to go about it based on the privilege that they have because of how they grew up. Ben, who whose brother, Jasper, worked desperately hard to put him through school and make sure he had time for his studies and really gave him the education and a different lifestyle. That brother sees politics and union organizing and the power that they've grown from the ground up. He sees a way to use that to lift their entire community, right? And by lifting their community, lift the family. Whereas Jasper goes, no, he's the one that broke his back shoveling coal and did dirty, horrible things to make sure that his family was provided for no matter what. And he believes that if we try this political thing, if we try the way that Ben wants to try and fail, then our family could lose everything. And he's 100% not willing to give that up. So it's a tug of war between two brothers that want the same thing but have different ways that they want to go about getting it. And it gets pretty rough.
Yeah, yeah. So you said earlier, that they're trying to leave their kind of pasts or their criminal enterprises behind. That doesn't go so well for them. They are not able to stay on that path for very long. Like it's not too far into the book and the body count starts rising.
That's true. It's true. It gets pretty violent. And listen, I have seen already like comments online. There are people that this just isn't for them, right? I would argue that this book is a story about family, and about the people at its core, and not about the violence. But I'm also not going to shy away from it. These are real things that happened in that day and time, and we're going to depict them and we're going to show them. And I feel like one way that we whitewash history, even though this is fiction, one way that we whitewash history is by not showing just how violent it was.
Yeah, I mean, this is
That
peak
long
era
ago.
for like mafia, right? And like in
100%.
different cities, it's different families, but the crime enterprise, it's really hard to peel away once you've been sucked into it.
Yeah, I mean, Detroit, it's a little bit in the book, but Detroit and Chicago were going at it at the time. During Prohibition, Detroit basically ran the booze through the whole country because Michigan went dry 2 years before the entire nation did. And
So they
all
had
that
time to
did,
gear up.
that taught them how to get illegal booze before everybody else was even thinking about it. And they're a border city to Canada. So all of a sudden, when the whole world went, oh no, where are we going to get the booze? Detroit just went, oh yeah, I gotcha. We know how to fix
Yeah.
that problem already. So like Al Capone was getting all of his booze for Chicago through the Purple Gang in Detroit. And then as Prohibition ended, all of a sudden that power imbalance is not there anymore, right? Like Detroit has nothing on Chicago, so they go at it pretty hard. And it's the partnership is what the mob is called. So it went from the Purple Gang to the partnership in Detroit, and it was the outfit in Chicago, which was Capone's gang.
Hmm. And as those tensions with the rival gangs increase, we start to get more and more pressure on this family to try to cover up.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
one thing I wanted to talk to you about was really around this kind of, it was more of a structural thing with the novel where it's like a vortex, right? You start with kind of all of these different threads of the family, and it comes closer and closer together as they jump in and try to save the family. They're all kind of working at cross purposes, and it comes to, I mean, what I really felt was a kind of cinematic climax with a lot happening in a short period of time.
Yeah, it again, and I will admit there are people who are coming at this as a novel, as they should. That's what it is, but I have been told it's not the normal novel experience. Some people have told me flat out they wish it would slow down, right? But that's
Mhm.
one. It's. I am a screenwriter. I'm so honored and feel lucky to have had this opportunity to write the book. But this is who I am as a writer, right? And so I see the way that the reason it's sort of this it sort of shoots into hyperdrive is because what happens is that every time something happens, someone tries to fix it, and that just makes the problem worse. And every time you put a band-aid on that band-aid on that band-aid, by the time it actually gets comical at some point.
Yeah.
Without saying it out loud fully, I'll say to you, there's a moment when one of the children finds a body in the trunk of a car that is horrific. And every time I get to that part in the book, I can't help but laugh because so many stupid things have happened to get to this point that she just doesn't even know what's happening anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, I do like a bit of dark comedy, so I enjoyed that. It approaches a little bit of farce, but also it's very serious, and the consequences are serious for the family, and you've come to care for these characters when, yeah, I mean, you feel their loss, yeah, a few losses by the end of it. You said before that you had, started out in screenwriting, and then that this novel was like kind of your first foray into more prose and fiction. I want to hear more about what that journey was like for you.
It was freeing. Um, I listen. I still have more practice and more experience as a screenwriter. That's for sure. So there is an element of just liking something new, right? It's always fun to dive into something brand new. But a movie or a screenplay, sorry, is not the final product, right? The movie is. It's
Hmm.
just a blueprint, and everybody else gets to color. The composer, the lighting techs, the cinematographer, right? The director, everything, the production designer, everyone else gets to create and fill in that world. And you can write in as much as you possibly can to sort of direct those things,
Hmm.
but ultimately you're just building the structure that everybody else can play on.
Hmm.
Whereas in the novel, it is the final product. This is the thing that goes to the consumer, and you have to build everything, including the inner thoughts and the inner feelings, and you have to build the backstories that allow you to understand where and why someone would feel a certain thing in the future.
Right.
So, two things happen, right? First, I am super lucky that as a first time novelist, I just happen to have a 65-page outline, right? With dialogue and a very well researched thing sitting there as a
Hmm.
jumping off point. The pilot that I wrote certainly wasn't long enough to do the entire novel. It's about a quarter of what the novel is.
Okay.
But after I got through that part and the screenplay started to end, I felt like at that point I was already running fast enough that I could do the rest by myself.
You
So
got the
it was
bike in
great.
motion and then kept it in motion.
Exactly right. Physics
Very cool.
101.
So I wanted to ask, there's another one coming. So like without spoiling what happens in the first book, like what can we expect in the second book? Is it the continuation of this story or is it something else?
It is a continuation. It's the same family 6 years later, and it's the beginning feels a little bit different, but it's different because you're trying to play catch up as to how did we get to where we're missing 6 years. So
Hmm.
the beginning is I actually really like the beginning because you're sort of like whoa, wait, when we left them last time we were how did we get to where we're at now, which is fun. But there's a real life mystery in Detroit that I put my characters into. And in 1943, so now we're deep into World War II, there was a race riot in Detroit. And the race riot was there was racial tensions building for a long time, and as it was about to boil over, there's an island. I don't know. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Detroit, but in between, into the Detroit River between Canada and Detroit, there is an island called Belle Isle, and there's a bridge from the Detroit side. Because that island, Black Bottom is all the way south towards the river. Because that island is there and the bridge is there, it became more of like a park or a recreation area for majority black people at the time, just because of where it was in the city. The real history says that on the bridge coming home from Belle Isle, in this one night in June in 1943, that there was a skirmish between white family and black family, and who gets thrown over the bridge is up for debate. White people fled the bridge saying that a black person had thrown a white woman and their child off the bridge and brought that rumor back to the white areas of town.
Hmm.
Black people left saying that a white person threw black people off the bridge, and that got to the black area of town. And by the time those rumors spread, it the entire they all just marched out of the bars they were in and started throwing rocks and setting things on fire. And it was 3 days of billions of dollars of property damage and many, many, many deaths. Um, and so I have no, and then nobody found anybody. All of the all of the turmoil, not nobody was found in the river. There's no basis on that. So I have taken my family and put them in that month
Yeah. Yeah.
to sort of
Interesting.
figure out what was happening and how it happened. Yeah.
I look forward to reading that. When do you know what the publication date is?
I just know that it's next summer. I don't know the
Okay.
date. Yeah.
Well, I'll look to catch up with you by then.
Yeah, I would love that.
Yeah, well, I just want to thank you so much, Joe, for coming on and talking about Sins of Survivors.
Thank
And
you.
I do hope someday this is adapted into a screenplay and
Please, from
yeah,
your
a
mouth.
feast for the senses. And thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.